At precisely 2:13 a.m., the world's most powerful politician disappeared. Prime Minister Alaric Vann of the Western Federation, a man known for shaping wars with a phone call, vanished during a private night visit to the Great Wall of China. His security detail watched from encrypted satellite feeds as a row of ancient lanterns, unconnected to any modern power source, lit up in a perfect sequence. Vann walked into the glow. Then, the signal died. No one was authorized to join him. Vann had demanded an exclusive tour under moonless skies, citing historical interests. The segment of the wall he chose had been closed for decades, deemed structurally unsafe and politically delicate. Guards stationed nearby later described hearing synchronized footsteps in the fog, too many for one person, too exact to be human. Footage from a backup thermal drone revealed a chilling detail. It showed Vann pausing before the lanterns, whispering something inaudible. Then he stepped forward and vanished mid-stride. No fall, no sudden movement. Just stone, silence, and a strange shimmer in the air where he'd stood. Officials moved fast to control the narrative. Chinese authorities claimed Vann suffered a hallucination-induced accident. Western spokespeople refused to confirm his fate. Journalists digging deeper found a thread of disturbing interest. Vann had been collecting rare texts and artifacts linked to dynastic rituals, esoteric engineering, and ancient myths surrounding the wall. Locals remember a legend that few dare speak aloud. They call it the Lantern Line. It said that when the lights ignite by themselves, a hidden gate within the wall awakens, and that the one who follows it may enter, but never return. Some say it happened once during the Qing dynasty. No one agrees on what came back. 3 days later, Vann's diplomatic brooch reappeared. It was found atop a temple roof nearly 300 kilometers away, perfectly placed in the center of a dragon-carved tile. No signs of intrusion. Monks reported hearing whispers the night before, voices speaking in a language no one recognized. An investigative journalist, Yara Day, attempted to follow the story. She was detained within hours, her recording seized. Rumors say she claimed the wall breathed beneath her feet and that certain stones pulsed with unnatural heat. Her final message hinted at a doorway that requires the right rhythm of light and blood. Now, another figure enters the stage. Cassia Vann, the Prime Minister's estranged daughter and a known investigator of hidden truths, has boarded a plane to Beijing. Uninvited, undeterred. As her plane lifts off, one final lantern flickers to life atop the wall, marking the beginning of a path no one should ever walk. Cassia Vann stepped off the plane like a shadow breaking protocol. The daughter of the missing Prime Minister was neither expected nor welcomed. Her past was shrouded in whispers. Former intelligence analyst, now private investigator specializing in political disappearances. Few knew she was adopted, fewer still knew by whom, and no one anticipated that she'd defy the Western Federation's silence to come searching for answers herself. The air in Beijing was thick with media denial. International networks parroted the narrative of a health emergency. Cassia didn't believe it for a second. Her father's encrypted files, accessed via a failsafe only she could trigger, pointed her to a specific tower along the wall's unrestored northern stretch. That tower, she discovered, had no official records of existence after 1893. She arrived at the wall under dusk's fading breath. With falsified credentials and a borrowed research badge, she passed through checkpoints with quiet precision. At the base of the tower, she encountered a blind monk, seated cross-legged in the cold. "You are late," he said before she spoke a word. "The wall remembers who walks with purpose." He handed her a brittle scroll sealed in red wax. The parchment was laced with diagrams and ancient characters. At the center, a symbol she recognized from her father's hidden collection, the sigil of the obedient flame. The monk told her it had been left for her, by someone who knew she'd come. and that only she, of blood and shadow, could read its true map. Night fell with uncanny silence. From the tower's height, Cassia saw the impossible. Lanterns along the wall lighting themselves one by one, from east to west, in perfect rhythm. The same pattern from her father's final video. She filmed it. But when she checked the footage, the lights didn't appear, only darkness. A movement caught her eye. Something or someone was walking beneath the lit path, but no form held, only flickers between flames. Cassia descended carefully, boots echoing against ancient stone. The figure was gone, but the chill it left clung to her bones. Then on the ground she saw them, footprints, bare, human, and ending mid-step. The trail led to a hollow between stones. Inside, nestled like a seed in dirt, lay a green jade medallion etched with the emblem of the Qin dynasty, identical to the one her father wore at all diplomatic ceremonies. But his had never left his side. Not until now. She looked back up the wall and froze. A new lantern had lit itself farther west than the others in a section officially closed for over a century. The path was moving, and she was already standing in its light. The stones beneath Cassia's feet began to hum, not audibly, but with a sensation that crawled into her bones. It wasn't just the wall, it was something buried inside it. A resonance she couldn't explain, growing stronger the closer she walked toward the lantern that had lit itself last. That section of the wall didn't exist on any tourist map, but it was calling her. She found the breach at dawn, a half-collapsed tunnel hidden by overgrown roots and sand-swept debris. As she slipped through the narrow opening, her flashlight caught inscriptions chiseled in spiraling scripts, older than any she'd seen. At the heart of the chamber, a sealed gate stood flanked by rusted chains and bronze guardian masks. Symbols marked it: blood, light, silence. Back at her hotel, she decrypted her father's sealed documents. They spoke of a lost ritual, one whispered among dynastic outcasts and occult scholars, the ritual of the Seventh Gate. A ceremonial reenactment only accessible to those of imperial bloodline, requiring the obedient flame to awaken what lay imprisoned. Vann hadn't been searching for knowledge. He'd been preparing to join something older than nations. Cassia returned the next night. A local guide she'd hired waited at the checkpoint, hesitant. He warned her of an old superstition. Those who enter the seventh chamber hear footsteps in their sleep forever. But she convinced him. Inside, the air was damp with age. The same footprints from the previous night now led deeper, then stopped. Just vanished. A shadow slithered across the far wall. The guide screamed and ran. Cassia turned too late to see anything, only to find his dropped flashlight flickering violently. The walls pulsed with warmth. Then, without warning, her vision warped. She stood not in stone, but in a battlefield. Ancient soldiers marched, silent and spectral, passing through her like fog. The Muralha twisted time, waking in darkness. Hours or moments later, she found new symbols burned into the chamber's wall. One translated as acceptance, another, exchange. The scroll from the monk matched them perfectly. Her bloodline wasn't coincidence. It was part of a lineage hidden from history, erased from records, but preserved by the wall itself. She confronted a historian once employed by her father. He confessed that Alaric Vann had long believed the wall was not a barrier but a lock, and the lanterns, not decorative, but alive. He didn't want to find the ritual, the man said. He wanted to be accepted by it. Then the chamber shook. A piece of stone fell from the ceiling, revealing a fragment of an inscription. He who walks the full line shall never walk in light again. The truth struck like a blade through silk. Cassia Vann had never questioned her adoption, until now. Buried within her father's encrypted letters was a hidden envelope, stamped not with a Federation seal, but an imperial Chinese crest, long thought lost to time. Inside, a single sentence in her father's handwriting. "You are the last unburned thread." The revelation shattered everything she knew. Cassia was not just the adopted daughter of a global leader. She was a descendant of a bloodline wiped from records during the Qin purges, the same dynasty that first lit the obedient flame. Her presence on the wall wasn't coincidence. It was preordained by a lineage erased from history, yet preserved in ritual. She followed the lanterns westward. Each light sparked to life seconds before she arrived, as if the wall itself acknowledged her presence. No birds sang, no wind stirred, just the soft crackle of flames and the weight of ancient stone watching her. She walked for miles, each step echoing with more purpose than the last. At the halfway point, she met the impossible. A figure stood between lanterns, clad in armor that shimmered like molten steel, yet cast no shadow. He didn't move, didn't speak. His face was hidden behind a ceremonial mask worn only by generals in the Ming dynasty. When she approached, he raised one finger toward the sky, then vanished into mist. The next lantern revealed a marker in the stone, a shallow engraving, the shape of a door split in 7 lines with a sun at its center. She sketched it quickly, then noticed her shadow had begun to elongate unnaturally, trailing not behind her, but sideways toward the wall's edge. It was responding to the flame, bending toward something unseen. That night, Cassia made camp inside a crumbling watchtower. As she drifted to sleep, visions overtook her. Generations of forgotten guardians, each giving their life to keep something sealed beneath the wall. In every vision, the final torchbearer looked exactly like her, and in every end, they chose silence over legacy. She woke with ashes on her hands. No fire had been lit in her camp. But her scroll now bore a new symbol at its center, one that shimmered only when near flame. It resembled a key made of braided roots, with a drop of blood falling from its tip. She finally understood. Her blood wasn't a key, it was the flame itself. Ahead, the final lantern flared into existence, floating. It hovered off the edge of the wall, suspended in mid-air where no path should exist. Beyond it, only mist, only silence. The line was no longer on the wall. It was leading her somewhere else. Cassia stepped into the void. The floating lantern hovered over nothingness, but as her boot crossed its glow, ancient stone materialized beneath her feet. A hidden bridge, invisible to the eye, revealed only by light. She was walking on air, carried by the rhythm of the flame. Each step forward erased the world behind her. The mist thickened, muffling even her heartbeat. Then it parted. Before her stood a temple, impossibly suspended in time and space, nestled between memory and myth. Its doors opened on their own. Inside, the air was heavy with centuries of silence, disturbed only by whispers from mouths she could not see, speaking in a language older than dust. In the heart of the temple stood a man, or what used to be one. Draped in imperial robes and wearing the same brooch she'd last seen on the temple roof, Alaric Vann looked like a statue animated by fire. His eyes glowed softly, unnaturally, and his voice cracked the silence like thunder. "You followed the line." Cassia's knees weakened at the sight of him. Her father stood alive, but changed. His presence felt larger, layered with something ancient and inhuman. He explained that the line of lanterns was not a path, but a ritual, that he had been chosen to bear the weight of its light, a role he now could not escape. Unless she took his place. The truth unfolded like fire-consuming paper. The wall was never merely a structure. It was a seal. Not for armies, but for concepts, spirits, identities too dangerous to roam free. Every few generations, someone of the old bloodline was called to maintain its bindings. Vann had answered the call, but he had aged 1,000 lifetimes in the process. Cassia's test was simple yet impossible. If she chose to stay, she would become the new anchor, a guardian without name or memory. If she refused, Vann would remain trapped, but the wall's power would weaken, and the seal would eventually fail. There was no victory, only preservation or collapse. Or, a mirror of obsidian stood beside them. It reflected not bodies, but truths. In it, Cassia saw herself at different ages, different eras, each version lighting the lanterns, each one vanishing into flame. The wall had always been watching her, guiding her, preparing her. She was never free. She was always chosen. Vann reached for her hand. As their fingers touched, the lanterns inside the temple began to dim, one by one. Only one remained, centered behind the altar, pulsing red, the final flame. And it was waiting for her alone. The stairs spiraled downward into silence. Beneath the temple where Cassia met her father stood another layer, one hidden even from the rituals. The stone under her feet pulsed faintly, like a sleeping heartbeat. She carried the lantern that had hovered above the void. Now it dimmed, as if the air down here swallowed light. Alaric didn't follow. He had paused at the top of the stairs, unwilling or unable to descend further. "This is your crossing," he said, his voice frayed like paper soaked in oil. "I was only the vessel for what comes next." Cassia descended alone, each step more surreal than the last, the very temperature of reality shifting around her. At the bottom, a door awaited. Not one of wood or steel, but one shaped from the wall itself. A circular slab etched with interwoven characters glowing faintly. Around it, 7 braziers stood unlit. Her scroll responded to their presence, unfurling itself, revealing a new symbol with each step closer. The door had waited for her, and only her. Cassia placed the lantern in the center pedestal. Flames shot out to the 7 braziers in sequence, forming a star of fire. The door pulsed, then dissolved, not opened, but ceased to exist. Beyond was a chamber where light bent unnaturally. Walls curved inward toward a floating altar made of translucent obsidian, and above it, a book, suspended mid-air and closed tight. The book hummed in her mind. It called her by name. Not Cassia, but every name she had ever been, in every life the wall had absorbed. She saw herself as a soldier, a monk, a mother, a ghost. The wall hadn't just kept things sealed, it had recycled souls through duty. This chamber was the core of the cycle. She reached for the book, but her fingers passed through it. It wasn't meant to be touched. Instead, her blood would write the final passage. A blade appeared beside the altar. No hand placed it there. It simply existed, the way stone exists after water has gone. She understood. The decision wasn't just whether to replace her father. It was to end the cycle entirely. Or extend it. One cut would bind her to the wall, protect the world and erase her identity. Another, the deeper one, would shatter the binding, unleashing what slept beneath into the waking world. The scroll ignited. The chamber pulsed. Time slowed, and Cassia, heart calm, placed her hand over the blade's hilt. She drew breath. Then from above her father screamed. The floor trembled, the lanterns flared violently, and the altar answered her blood with a blaze of red light, echoing a new truth into the stones above. The guardian has chosen. The final flame whispered her name, not aloud, but in thought, in memory, in a voice that sounded both like her own and like someone long buried. Cassia stood before the altar, the crimson lantern glowing steadily, radiating not heat, but hunger. Alaric Vann stepped back, eyes dimming, as if the light itself pushed him away. Cassia felt time disintegrate. She no longer stood in a temple, but in the marrow of the wall itself, its origin and heart. Around her, spectral figures flickered in and out of focus. Women cloaked in silk, warriors bearing broken swords, children holding lanterns in bleeding palms. All of them watched her, None of them breathed. At the center, a brazier burned without fuel. Its fire licked upward in slow, deliberate waves. Inside the flame, names spun in loops, thousands, maybe millions, each one once a guardian, each one forgotten by the world. Cassia's name appeared next, not written, but formed by flame. To accept it was to erase the rest of her life. She looked at her father. Alaric Vann was trembling now, eyes hollow. "It never wanted me," he whispered. "I borrowed time. I held its place. But you're the rightful vessel." His voice cracked. "I remember less each minute. I don't know my name anymore. I don't know if I ever had one." The brazier spoke. Not with words, but through a tide of understanding that drowned her thoughts. If she entered the flame, the world would remain unchanged, safe. The wall would hold. The entities sealed beneath it would continue their slumber. But she would be no one, no daughter, no investigator, only light. Cassia stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed the brazier's circle, the air thickened into memory. She saw her childhood, her first betrayal, the moment she'd uncovered her father's secrets. And then, silence. The fire did not burn. It consumed without pain. She became heat, motion, legacy. Vann collapsed as the flame dimmed. Outside, the lanterns extinguished one by one, as if the ritual had finished. A breeze stirred over the wall for the first time in days. The mist lifted. And Alaric Vann, hollowed and grey, walked into the daylight, eyes wet with fire that no longer belonged to him. But the world didn't notice the change. Tourists returned. Guards resumed patrol. No one remembered Cassia Vann. She had vanished from every database, every image, every document. But that night, a single lantern relit, miles from the wall, standing alone at the edge of the Gobi Desert. The wall was silent for 3 days. No wind, no tourists, no movement. Locals claimed it had gone asleep. Drones failed to transmit, sensors flatlined, and then, on the dawn of the 4th day, the lanterns flared to life once more, not across the wall, but at its base. They lit inward, forming a circle, a seal. Alaric Vann sat alone in a medical suite in Vienna. He no longer responded to names, only to light. Staff noted he reacted strongly to fire, staring into candles as if searching for meaning. Once, he muttered, "She chose the deep cut." No one understood. But satellite surveillance captured his fingerprints pulsing faintly, weeks after he stopped using his hands. Cassia Vann no longer existed in any official form. Her name had vanished from all records. Photos of her dissolved into static. Former colleagues had fragmented memories, vague feelings, unfinished sentences. Didn't she go missing on a case? No, I think she died young. Yet, in the northernmost tower of the wall, a mural began to form, depicting a woman in flame. Researchers studying the wall's geology found impossible anomalies. Cavities within the stone began rearranging, sealing off previously known chambers. A magnetic pulse pulsed in 7-day intervals, matching the cadence of the lantern line. Instruments placed inside one tower began broadcasting a tone, intermittent, rhythmic, matching a human heartbeat. The tone was traced to the Gobi Desert. There, in the shadow of a long-buried wall fragment, stood a single lantern, unpowered, but glowing. Within days, others appeared, always in a perfect line. They were spreading outward, away from the Great Wall, pointing toward forgotten landscapes. Historians scrambled, military satellites locked in. No one dared move them. Folklore blossomed. Pilgrims claimed to see a woman in red along the wall's spine, vanishing between towers. Children spoke of dreams where she whispered in rhyme. A viral video showed a tourist claiming to follow a new path of lights, only to disappear after reaching the 4th flame. The footage ends with his voice saying, "She lit the way." The Western Federation denied all knowledge. But in a secure vault, a report labeled Cassia Obfuscate Omega was filed and sealed. Inside were satellite maps of the new Lantern Line, its trajectory arcing east, then south. A handwritten note was paperclipped to the cover. "We didn't seal it, we redirected it." Far beneath the wall, where no foot may tread, a single pulse remains. It echoes in stone, in blood, in memory. Cassia Vann became more than guardian. She became myth. And myths do not sleep. They wait.